Hello, fellow wrestling fans. This is a special version of Wrestling Talk with Mason Storm. The reason why this is a special version is I decided to make a little bit of a podcast about how I started watching wrestling. I know I'm probably going to get criticized about how I feel about wrestling when I talk about it, but I really don't care. I really don't care what other people think about how I feel about wrestling and what type of wrestling I like. So, I guess let's start from the beginning. When I was little, growing up, I really didn't have... I pretty much got whatever I wanted, but, I didn't really have too much to watch on TV. I didn't really understand things that much. Then, I want to say probably about 1998, which I was born in 1994, by the way. So I'm going to be 23 years old in November. So, when I started watching wrestling, it was... WWE was big about the Attitude Era, and because of such, my mom did not really like that. So at the time, I actually watched more WCW. Yes, World Championship Wrestling. That is how I started watching wrestling. And back then, I thought it was the best thing on planet Earth. I still think WCW was a great company until the end. But back then, I would watch people like Sting. Ric Flair was in WCW at the time. Randy Macho Man Savage. And then, of course, my favorite wrestler of all time, Diamond Dallas Page. Yes, he was... there's a reason why I say he is my favorite wrestler of all time. Just great person, great with the fans, great... I met him a couple of years ago, and he's just a great person. So, anyways, kind of going back to the story, and if you guys don't want to listen to the story, you don't have to. Just don't listen to this podcast. So anyways, but I loved wrestling. Pretty much, I was 4 years old at the time, so I would watch wrestling pretty much any chance I could. And as I said, I watched more WCW because at the time, they were doing the Attitude Era stuff, and my mom wasn't a huge fan of that, especially like the bra and panties matches and stuff like that. My mom didn't really care for. So, WCW is what I watched. And just, I became such a big fan of wrestling because of just the things that these wrestlers could do. My original favorite cruiserweight, Billy Kidman, the stuff he could do in the ring was awesome. And so, I watched wrestling probably until I was around 13. I slowed down on watching wrestling because by that time I was into football and just all I cared about was football. But then at the age of 15 I got back into wrestling. What helped me get back into wrestling was my middle brother. He's the second oldest in my family. Dawson. he started watching wrestling, and at the time, he became a huge John Cena fan. By the way, this was around 2002-ish. So when he started to watch wrestling, I got back into it. Even went to Raw the night after WrestleMania, when WrestleMania was here in Chicago, and loved the matches and all that. Then I kind of got out of it again for a short while until TNA, Impact, well, what now is Impact Wrestling, came out. And it had a bunch of my favorite wrestlers again. Diamond Dallas Page, Sting, Macho Man for a short while, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Jeff Hardy. So pretty much that is why I love watching wrestling. I love the action. I love the matches. I could care less about the dramatics. To the side, I just don't care. But wrestling has been in and out of my life, all of it, really. I mean, just wrestling is one of my favorite things to watch when I'm bored. I mean, and now you got NXT, and you got TNA, and you got Raw and SmackDown. I mean, you pretty much, if you really try, you can watch wrestling every day of the week. And I do, if I can. I love just watching wrestling. It's a fun thing for me to do, and as I said, I kind of started with WCW, but then would eventually transition to WWE. I mean, I love the Hardy Boys. Jeff Hardy is my third all-time favorite wrestler, next to Diamond Dallas Page and AJ Styles. So, for me, wrestling just will always be something that kind of reminds me back of my childhood. And, I mean, even at one time, I thought I was going to be a wrestler. So, that is why I love wrestling. And as far as my favorite wrestlers go, as I said, Diamond Dallas Page is my favorite male wrestler, then AJ Styles, then Jeff Hardy. Female, it's AJ Lee. She's number one for me, always will be. She just, I think she's hot, and anyways, so I'm not gonna get, sorry guys, but, and then Alexa Bliss is next, and I don't really have a 3, 4, 5, or whatever female favorite wrestlers. So, wrestling just has always been fun for me to watch. I mean, as I said, for a little while I kind of stopped watching it, but that was because at that time it was during the PG era, and I got tired of watching it. I think the last match I watched before I got back into wrestling was the Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk match in Hell in a Cell, in which Jeff Hardy had to leave the company if he lost, which we all know he did, and ended up signing with TNA, which is part of the reason why I gravitated towards TNA once he came to TNA. But I will always be a wrestling fan. Even if I'm a corporate wrestling fan, it's just wrestling by how many years I've watched it is in my blood. And that is the story of why, I guess the story of why I love wrestling, how I became a wrestling fan, etc. like that. So, if you guys have any comments or just questions, let me know. You can tweet me at MasonStormWPC on Twitter, or contact me on Facebook. I'm Mason Storm, or Mason Dunbar on Facebook, or just YouTube, because other, as well as Spreaker, this also goes up on YouTube. So, but that is it. Thank you for listening to this special, and I guess that's it. Bye.